Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another Satisfactory video, where in my last video I did fully automate a bunch of stuff from tier 7 and 8, and so just to name a few, I did fully automate turbo motors, fused modular frames, cooling systems, and supercomputers, as well as radio control units and crystal oscillators. And heat sinks too, almost forgot those all the way in the back there. But the point is that I fully automated a bunch of stuff from tier 7 and 8, which brings me to what I want to do in today's video. And so what I want to do in today's video is I want to fully automate the assembly director systems, which is needed for the space elevator here. And so I actually have myself a bit of a plan for how I want to automate the assembly director systems here. So you can see it's going to cost 1.5 adaptive control units and 0.75 supercomputers to make 0.75 assembly director systems. And so if I go ahead and look at my notes here, the amount of assembly director systems I want to fully automate is 1.5 assembly director systems per minute. And now the reason why I went with 1.5 instead of, say, 2 assembly director systems per minute or 4 or whatever is actually pretty simple, and that is copper. Because you see, in order to make supercomputers, it requires a ton of copper. But you see, I actually want to build the assembly director system right beside the adaptive control unit factory right over there. And according to my notes, I am already using up all 3 of the copper nodes that are right beside it over there, but there is one impure copper node somewhere in the back over there, just kind of above that hill right there. But you see, the trick is, if I want to make 2 assembly director systems per minute, it requires 316 copper, which is just a little bit over what a Mark III miner can mine out of an impure node. Or sorry, fully overclocked Mark III miner, because a fully overclocked Mark III miner can only produce 300 copper ore per minute. So I had to slightly underclock, or sorry, not underclock, but I had to make less assembly director systems now, which is why I'm making 1.5 instead of 2 per minute, which is fine actually, because if I go ahead and look at my notes, that means I do only need 237 copper per minute, which is great. That means I can totally grab all my copper from that impure node totally just fine. So with that problem solved, I come to my second problem, which is Caterium. Because you see, I'm going to need about, I think it's 62 Caterium ingots per minute in order to make the AI limiters and the high-speed connectors. And so I thought originally that was going to be a problem because right now the nearest Caterium node is right over there, which I'm already fully utilizing. Or actually, you know what, that's a good question. Am I fully utilizing that node? Let's see, if I go down to the, oh, you know what? Not only am I not fully utilizing the node, but I actually have enough ingots left over to just straight up belt it over onto the highway, which means I don't actually need to add any more refineries or upgrade the Mark II miner over there. I can just straight up belt it over, which is great. That's one less thing I have to deal with. But the other thing too that I want to point out is I already have 2 lanes on the highway here already going over to the space elevator area over there. Or sorry, not space elevator area, the modular frame and adaptive control unit factory over there, which also means I don't have to worry about belting it over all the way over there either, which is also really good. And so now with that second problem figured out, there is a third problem I had to figure out too, which is the plastic, because I also am going to need plastic to make the circuit boards, to make the computers and high-speed connectors and all that stuff. And now I do know I did mention in the last video that I wasn't making enough extra plastic in my oil fields over here to feed, well, this supercomputer factory. So how am I going to feed an entire separate factory? Because I also did mention I'm already using up all the oil, which is kind of true, but I later then realized that the second pure node, I think it's somewhere on this island or this island right here, I forget which one it is, but I am totally using up that pure node for fuel generators, which I no longer need, which means I can totally tear down the fuel setup I have over there and reutilize it to make my plastic that I need for the supercomputers, which I think works out really well. And so that's pretty much the three main problems I had with the materials I needed for the supercomputer factory that I'm going to place right beside the space elevator factory over there. And now, like I just mentioned, the reason why I am putting it beside there is because the assembly director systems do need adaptive control units, and I'm already making 4 adaptive control units right there, so that's why I'm making it all the way over there. But yeah, I think as far as the first thing that I need to get done is I think I want to tackle the plastic first, because I think that's going to take up the most amount of time to build out of the whole production line. Actually, I think it's going to take the longest, and also I want to get it done as quickly as possible and out of my hair so I don't have to worry about it later and stuff. So I think that is going to be the plan for right now. And so actually, if I head over to the fuel generator setup over there, I can actually see what I need to destroy, and I can also see how much room I have left over to build up the 13 refineries I need for the plastic. Anyways, though, that now that I'm over here, yeah, you can see that I'm using up that oil node all the way over there to make, I think it's, how much fuel is this making? It's making a lot of fuel anyways. But no, this used to be the main fuel generator area that I had before I made the mega fuel plant a few videos ago now. And so since there is really no need for this to exist anymore, I can just tear this down and repurpose it to make the plastic I need for the supercomputer factory I need to build up, which honestly shouldn't be too difficult. It should be pretty straightforward, seeing how it's just 13 refineries and I don't actually need all the oil from the oil node either. I actually only do need 378 crude oil per minute to make all the plastic I need, which is another bonus, because that means I'm going to have leftover oil there to make more plastic or rubber for other things at either the starter base or whatever around here, which is great. But anyways, I've been rambling on now for already quite a while, so I'm going to go ahead and tear all this down, build up the fuel area, and just kind of see how that goes in general anyway. And you know what? Building up all of the plastic refineries here for the supercomputer factory actually didn't take a really long time, and it was also pretty simple to set up, because I mean, I wasn't really doing much. I just had to set up 12 refineries here, just making plastic, and then some petroleum coke refineries at the end there to get rid of the heavy oil residue. Now, my notes did say that I did need 13 refineries, but in reality I only did need about 12.6. So what I did is I just overclocked one of the refineries to 160% instead of building an entire other refinery, just to kind of save me that extra time. But anyways, so I do have it all hooked up here, and I also do have a temporary breaker set up here just to make sure that the whole system here works and everything. So if I just go to here, flip the switch, everything should turn on. And so yeah, there you go, you can see everything is turning on. And if I go down to the bottom level here, everything here should also be turning on, except it's not actually getting any oil, which is interesting. Let me just try and reconnect the pipe. Still nothing. What if I just go ahead and do something like that? Will it give me any oil? Still won't give me anything. You know, that is really interesting. Oh, you know what? Do I have to replace the floor hole? Oh, that would be super annoying. But you know what? Let me just go ahead and replace the floor hole and see what that does. Okay, yeah, so it seems like the floor hole was the problem. So I did just go ahead and replace it, and it seems to be working now. Although I have never seen that issue before, so that was kind of interesting. But anyways, looks like everything is working now. And now, of course, I'm not going to let this system run too long. I just wanted to make sure that I have everything going where it needs to go. And yeah, it does seem like everything is working at 100% efficiency. The plastic here is moving towards the area where I want to build up the supercomputers, which is good. Most of the refineries are turned on. And if I just go all the way to the end here, it looks like the heavy oil residue still hasn't made its way all the way through the pipe system here. But you can see that it is registering here that it is heavy oil residue coming through these pipes, which means the entire pipe network here is connected. So you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and leave that running now for a few minutes. But while I leave that running, I still do need to bring over the copper and the caterium, which I did mention would be easier to bring over than the plastic, mainly because I don't need to build up an entire refinery setup, but I do have to bring it over nevertheless. Anyways though, if I just go ahead and look on the map here, now I don't actually have the space elevator base marked down here, but I do know my Caterium line is somewhere in this area right here, and I do know the Belt Highway runs kind of in this area right here. So, and I also did mention I already do have a lane on the highway going toward the factory area, which is great, so I can go ahead and utilize that. But as far as the copper goes, if I just go onto the map here, so yeah, looking at my notes here, it seems like the impure copper node is somewhere up in this area right here. And if I zoom out a little bit, I think my factory area for the space elevator parts and where I want to put the supercomputer area is somewhere kind of like down here, or at least somewhere in this general area, which means it is going to be quite the journey to get that copper from the node all the way to the base. Although it shouldn't be too big a problem, I just hook up a Mark V belt and leave it alone. But before I can even go ahead and belt up the Caterium and copper, I need to actually figure out where the final resting place of this factory is going to be so I don't belt it up to the wrong area or whatever. And so that I'm actually over where the space elevator factory is here, making the adaptive control units and the modular engines. So my general idea for where I wanted to put it was somewhere over here, like right beside this factory right here. Or actually, even better, if I really wanted to, since I actually don't need to build up a whole ton of stuff to make all of the supercomputers I need, I could probably just extend this top floor here out just a little bit, and that could be where I put all of my supercomputer stuff. Or even better, seeing all of the empty space here on the top and the bottom of the factory here, if I really tried hard enough, I could probably fit all the machines like just right here. Although there is a lot of machines to build up the supercomputers, so I might not go quite with that idea too much. Although I may place the supercomputer manufacturer and the adaptive control unit assembler up here on this level here, simply because it'll be easier to belt over the adaptive control units if it's on the same factory as the supercomputer and, what is it, assembly director system. Anyways though, you know what I think I'm gonna do is I might build out just an entire separate factory from it, just to keep everything a little bit more organized and keep it separated so you know that this factory is separate from this one, kind of thing. So I think that is what I'm gonna do. And yeah, so you know what? I think from here I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can build up the first floor of the factory, see what that kind of looks like. And then from there, I'm gonna build up the copper and the Caterium. But anyways, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and belt up the, or sorry, not belt up. I'm gonna build up the first floor of the factory here and see what that kind of looks like anyway. And well, this is what the first level of the factory looks like right here. And so the one thing you'll notice is that it's about half the size of this factory right here. And mainly because simply there isn't a lot of machines involved in making the supercomputer. Or well, there is a lot of machines, but not like it's going to require 150 constructors and like 80 something assemblers to make, what is it, like 1.875 supercomputers or whatever. So anyway, that's why it is this small. The exact measurements is 11 foundations by 11 foundations, starting from this point right here, if you are wondering that anyways. The other thing I also did do is I also brought over the Caterium here, you can see, which like I mentioned earlier is pretty straightforward. All I really had to do was just split it off somewhere in the starter base and built it over on the highway. I just had to make sure to disconnect it from the rest of the highway. Otherwise, it would just keep going all the way to my oil setup over there, which isn't good. But anyways, so now that I have the plastic and the Caterium, the only thing left that I need to get is the copper. And now the reason why I'm leaving that for last is because it's going to be the most annoying out of the three of them. Or sorry, not the most annoying. It's going to be the most interesting out of the three of them. Because the copper node, if I just go ahead and zoom in here, is all the way over there. You can see the Mark III miner right there. And so what I have to do is over there, I have to set up a smelting station that can smelt the 300 copper I need, and then belt it all the way over to the base, which honestly it shouldn't be too difficult, because I mean 300 copper can fit all on one belt, and I mean it isn't super far away. I mean, like I just mentioned, I can see the Mark III miner from here. So in hindsight, it should be pretty okay to get all of the copper I need. The interesting stuff actually happens after I get all the materials together, because from there, I then have to start, well, making the copper sheets, the wire, the cable, what else? The quick wire, the circuit boards, the high-speed connectors. I have to make everything up on the base here. I mean, obviously. But it's just going to be kind of interesting. At least I think it is going to be anyway. And yeah, so pretty much from here, I am going to go ahead and belt up the copper over there. Or sorry, I'm going to smelt it and then belt it from over there all the way to the base here. And then from there, I think I'm going to maybe lay out the factory a little bit, kind of see where I want all the machines to go, how I want it to all flow together. I have a rough idea of how I want it to flow together. And so to quickly explain that actually, so starting from this area right here, it's going to be kind of similar to how I made the workflow system for this factory right here. And so what I mean by that is, for this factory, if I just go to the back of the factory over here, you can see at the very back of the factory, this is where I have all of the smelters or foundries or constructors here making the limestone into concrete. But anyways, the general workflow I want to go with is kind of the same here. So like I start with the smelters, it goes into the constructors, where it will then go into the assemblers, where it will then go into the manufacturers, where it will then all come together to make the final product, which in this case is supercomputers, which will then be brought together with the adaptive control units to make the assembly director systems. But yeah, so that's pretty much the plan I have for how I want to make up the workflow of this factory. I just have to, well, section it out. So like these 5 tiles are for copper, and then caterium, and then whatever plastic stuff I have. But like I did mention earlier in the video, all 3 of these things work pretty closely together. And what I mean by that is they intersect a lot. And just to use a quick example here of what I mean by that is like the iron here and the copper don't mix a whole lot. It's not like you have a whole ton of iron plates or iron screws or iron rods going into the copper section or vice versa. You only really see that crossover like later on in the production line, once you get to like assemblers, when you're making stators or rotors. But with all 3 of these things, caterium, copper, and plastic, they all like I did mention, intersect a lot, even in the beginning steps of the factory, if that makes sense anyway. But you know what, that's enough of me rambling on. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, belt over the copper, section out the factory, and like always, I am going to update you guys when I'm done all of that stuff. Alright, that now I have the copper ingots over there fully smelted and brought over to the main base here, and also the main base is all sorted, so I know where all the machines are going. I now have a better picture of where I want to put all of the machines. And so the first thing you're going to notice is I did actually have to make the base longer. It wasn't long enough the way it was. And the other thing you'll notice is that I have 3 groups laid out here as well. And so to explain what's going in these 3 groups, in this first group here, I have the quick wire constructors in this group. The second one in the middle there is going to be for the copper sheets. And then the one at the end there is going to be for the copper wire. And now the reason why I have it orientated like that is because the quick wire and copper sheets are used a lot in different machines. So for example, to make the AI limiters, it's going to use up copper sheets and quick wire, whereas the copper wire is just going to be used to make the cable, which will then go into high-speed connectors and computers. And then I think one more thing, but I can't remember what it is. Or no, wait, that's it. It's just for the computers and high-speed connectors, I think. Anyways, I have to redouble check my notes for that one. But that's pretty much the main plan there on how I want to keep the whole base organized there. And then as far as where the plastic comes in, since the plastic is mainly used for the circuit boards, computers, I think the high-speed connectors too, and then of course the supercomputers, they don't really come in until a bit later in the production process. So I'm not really too worried about making an entire section just for plastic because, well, it doesn't really need it. But yeah, so that's pretty much how I organized the whole factory floor floor here. And the other thing too I'm gonna have to do is I am also gonna have to build up a second floor, which is fine. I wasn't expecting on building a second floor. Or what I could probably do instead is I could probably just make this a bit longer if I really wanted to, but I really don't want to make it any bigger than it already is. And now the reason why I do need to make a second floor is because, well, I mean, I have to build up a ton of constructors and assemblers and then 6 manufacturers, which is totally not fitting all on this level right here. But anyways, I will worry about that in the future. For right now though, I am gonna have to build up the constructors for the quick wire, copper sheets, and copper wire there. And also for the cable, because I'm also going to need, well, cable, like I mentioned earlier. And yeah, so that's pretty much all I did was that. There's really nothing going on down here underneath the base, just a power line here going over to the copper, and then the copper belt going behind the factory right there, so I can have the copper hooked up and everything. So nothing special going on. I did set up a breaker here though, for obvious reasons, to turn it on and off if I need to. But yeah, anyways, so that's pretty much all I did. And so from here, I'm going to go ahead and build up all of the constructors and see where that takes me anyway. And of course, I'm going to update you guys when I am done building up all of the constructors. Alright, so just finished building up all of the constructors here, and it didn't take too long to build them up either. I mean, you can see here there's not a lot of constructor action going on here, but I did build everything up, so you can see the Caterium is going where it needs to go, and the copper is also going where it needs to go. And so I am making everything that I need to using the constructors. So like I did mention before, I have the quick wire, the copper sheets, the copper wire, and then the cable. And then from here, I think the only 2 things in this entire build that requires assemblers are the circuit boards and the AI limiters, because everything else is made in a manufacturer from that point. And actually, if I go ahead and just take a look at my notes, yeah, it seems like everything else needs to be made in a manufacturer. So like the computers, the high-speed connectors, and then obviously the supercomputers. And I'm already making the adaptive control unit. So yeah, pretty much the only 2 things that need to be made in the assemblers are the circuit boards and AI limiters. And so if I actually take a look, what's needed to actually build up those things. So if we go ahead and look at the circuit boards here, so it requires copper sheets and plastic. And then if I just pull up another assembler beside it and just take a look at the AI limiters, it also requires copper sheets and quick wire. And so where I think I'm gonna put these, since both of these don't actually have anything to do with the copper wire cable, is, well, I'm going to put both of the assemblers kind of on this side of the factory right here, seeing how that's where I put the quick wire and the copper sheets. And as far as the order of how I want to line them up per se, is I want to put the AI limiters kind of in the middle of the factory, kind of like right here, and then I want to put the circuit boards kind of on this side of the factory here, just so it's a bit easier to pull in the plastic, so it doesn't have to go so far inwards in the factory. Although that won't matter too much anyway, because I'm going to need the plastic for the computers and supercomputers, as well as the high-speed connectors, and I think the supercomputers too, so it doesn't really matter where I put the circuit board assemblers. But anyways though, the point still stands, I do need to build both of these up. And if I actually just take a look here, yeah, so in my notes it actually says that I do only need to build 4 circuit board assemblers and what is that, 0.6 AI limiter assemblers, which is actually really good because that means I only need 5 assemblers total. That's actually not a lot of assemblers. I actually just realized that it only needs 5 assemblers. Interesting. Anyways though, I still need to build them up, which, seeing how there's only 5 assemblers, should only take about 10 minutes. And yeah, I'm gonna update you guys when I'm done building up the assemblers. Alright, so I just built up all of the assemblers I'm gonna need, well, all 5 of them. And so you can see here I have the AI limiter assembler over here and all of the circuit board assemblers over here. Now I do know that earlier I did say I was gonna put them like the other way around, but honestly at the end of the day it didn't really matter anyways which way I put it, so I ended up going and putting them like this. And so now comes the really tricky part, and that is building up all of the manufacturers. And so while I was building up all of the assemblers, I actually had the idea that instead of building up a second level to this factory, I just build a conveyor highway, like a small conveyor highway, leading up to this small empty space up here and building up all 6 manufacturers in this area right here. Which, I mean, might sound impossible. And I mean, it might very well might be impossible. But I mean, if I'm looking at this area right here, I managed to fit 8 manufacturers in this big an area. And that's back to back like this too. I didn't even try and conserve any space. So I'm pretty sure I could fit 6 manufacturers. And especially if I overclock a couple of the manufacturers. Like for example, I think I only do need 1.2 high-speed connector manufacturers. So instead of having 2 manufacturers, I could just have one manufacturer that's overclocked to 120%. And then another example is I'm going to need 2.4 computer manufacturers. And so instead of building 3, I could very easily just build up 2 manufacturers and just overclock one of them to 40%. So I could very easily just do that too. Which I mean, I'm pretty fine with because, I mean, I have no shortage of powder shards anyway. But yeah, so I think that is going to be the plan on how I want to build up all of the manufacturers. It should be pretty interesting. And also I do like how I'm using up the empty space for my other factory over here. Oh, and you know what? It would also be easier to build up the adaptive control unit, seeing how they're literally right here. I can just go ahead and, well, figure out how to belt them over this way anyways. But yeah, so I'm pretty confident that this is going to work the way I think it's going to work. And so I'm going to update you guys when I'm done building up the manufacturers. And finally, after about an hour, maybe a bit longer than that, I did finally finish building up all of the manufacturers needed to make the assembly director systems. And so like I did mention before, some of these are overclocked. So for example, this manufacturer making computers here is overclocked to 140%. Because I did technically need 3 manufacturers, but I didn't have room for it, so like I said, I overclocked it just slightly. Same thing with the high-speed connectors over here, and also for the assembly director systems here as well, because I did technically need 2 assemblers here to make 1.5 assembly director systems, but I didn't have room for 2 assemblers. So I did just overclock the one here to make 1.5. And so apart from that, everything else was actually a bit interesting to get done. Especially the belting, because since I'm working with like really confined spaces here, like you can see there's not a whole ton of room here for belt work. So it was pretty interesting getting the belting done, but I did get it all figured out in the end. And so from here, if I go to the breaker box over here, you can see that the entire factory is consuming a total of 1100 megawatts, and that does include the oil setup, or sorry, the plastic setup I have all the way over there as well. That is going to be used for making the supercomputers. And so actually, I think that's pretty reasonable, 1100 megawatts. Although I am expecting that to go up a little bit, seeing how some of the manufacturers are overclocked, and the Mark III miner all the way over there is fully overclocked. So I am expecting it to go up. But anyways, if I go ahead and flip the switch, yeah, you can see here that my max consumption went from about 16,500 to 17,700, so quite a significant boost there. But you can see here some stuff is already immediately working, and I forgot to connect some other things here too. But you can see here the Caterium's already going ahead and doing its thing over here. Now none of the copper stuff is on, obviously, because it needs to wait for the copper, although it shouldn't take too long for copper ingots to start making its way down from the mountain over there. So just zooming in here, you can already see some copper ingots starting to come out down from the mountain, moving its way over. So it is definitely going to take a significant amount of time to overclock all of the copper ingot stuff over here. But yeah, you can already see it starting to work pretty well here. And there you go. You can even start seeing some quick wire make its way up to the manufacturers up here. That's interesting though. None of the plastic is making its way over. Oh no, there it goes. So yeah, just the plastic setup needed some time to get going, I guess. So there you go. So it's already already starting to do its thing. But yeah, so this is definitely going to take quite a while to fully saturate and get itself going. So actually, you know what? I am going to update you guys in a few minutes after I let this run for a while, and I'll see if there's any bugs and see if it actually works properly or not anyway. Alright, so I have left the factory running here now for a little bit. Not a long time, but a little bit. And it does seem to be working pretty well. It does look like a few machines here still do need some time to fully saturate. But if I go up to the manufacturers here, all I really care about is if I'm making my supercomputers at 100% efficiency. And so if I go ahead and just look at those, I am making my supercomputers at 100% efficiency, which means I am making my assembly director systems at 100% efficiency, as you can see here in the assembler, which is great. It is still going to take about, like, what is that, 8.5 hours to get 500 assembly director systems. But then again, it's not like I'm on a time crunch to get the assembly director systems at all. But anyways, I'm pretty proud of getting all of this done in one video. And I mean, that pretty much brings me to the end of the video. But just before I close up shop, I do real quickly want to talk about what I want to get done in my next video, because while I was AFKing all of this, I did unlock nuclear power just to see like what's required, like just to see like the numbers and stuff. And so if I just go ahead and pull out the power plant and just go ahead and take a look at how much uranium fuel rods it burns through. It burns through 0.2 uranium fuel rods per minute, which is not a lot of fuel rods. And if I actually go ahead and take a look at the manufacturer here and see how many uranium fuel rods I can make per minute, it seems here that in one manufacturer I can make 0.4 uranium fuel rods per minute, which means one manufacturer can feed 2 nuclear power plants. And now I haven't made up like any notes or a plan yet. I just have kind of like looked at the numbers and kind of eyeballed like what it's going to cost and stuff. But overall, I think it should be possible to make a reasonably sized power plant, nuclear power plant. And so my like end goal for the nuclear power plant, or I should say my end power goal or whatever, is I want it to make somewhere in the ballpark of 60,000 megawatts, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if I just pull up the manufacturer again and go to the uranium fuel rods, you can see here that it requires encased uranium cells, obviously, which I think is made in the assembler. Okay, so it seems like the encased uranium cell actually is made inside the blender. But yeah, so you can see here, to make 25 encased uranium cells, it requires 50 uranium per minute. And so I'm actually not sure how much uranium there is in the world total, but I think it's something like 2,500 uranium, which is not a lot of uranium. But anyways, I haven't figured out all the numbers yet, or haven't done any calculations, so I'm gonna have to figure all that out a bit later. But essentially the point I'm trying to get at is I don't want to build a super big nuclear power plant, because that's going to get super complicated super fast, and mainly also just the logistics of it. Like, for example, if I wanted to make, say, 15 uranium fuel cells, or sorry, fuel rods per minute, like what would that be? That would be like 1,000 uranium fuel, or not uranium ore, not uranium fuel. It's going to take, like, what would that be? Yeah, 1,000 uranium ore per minute. And there are only so many nodes in the entire world, so that's going to be a super big logistical issue. The other logistical issue, too, is one of these nuclear power plants right here also requires 240 water per minute, which doesn't sound like a lot of water for one unit. But let's say if I wanted to build 100, we just go to the calculator and type in 240 times that by 100. That's 24,000 water per minute. And how many water extractors would that be actually if I just go back to the calculator? So one water extractor can extract 300 per minute, right? So if I go in, put in 24,000, divide that between 300, that's going to take 80 water extractors. That's going to be 40 Mark II pipes total. That's insane. Which again, I mean, people have done that before. For example, Kibitz, I think, built up, what is it, like 100 nuclear power plant, like mega factory. So I'm not saying it isn't possible. I'm just saying I don't want to deal with that. But anyways, like I said, haven't done any math or anything yet. So I'm going to have to deal with that out in the next video though. But anyways, I'm pretty much rambling on about stuff that I haven't even decided about yet. So yeah, I think from here I'm just going to go ahead and close up shop. And yeah, so thank you for watching today's video. I really hope you did enjoy it. I know I enjoyed today's video, and if you could please like and subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out a lot when you do that. And also, if you could please leave a comment, I would also really enjoy that also, because I really like reading comments. But yeah, thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!